On the afternoon of August 26, 2011, in Chap, Massachusetts, 20-year-old Amanda Plass hurried to prepare for her waitressing shift at a local Friendly's. Known for her reliability, Amanda was in a bind without her car and scrambling to find a lift. While getting ready, her spirits were high. She adored her job and felt her new boyfriend was truly special. Though their life together had just begun, her promising future would be violently shattered in an instant. Despite the critical evidence being in plain sight the entire time, investigators would spend years unraveling the tragic mystery of Amanda's death. Roughly an hour west of Boston, Massachusetts, you'll find the historic city of Chicopee. Famed for the Westover Air Force Base, the largest in America, the town is defined by its namesake, the Chicopee and Connecticut rivers, which earned it the moniker Crossroads of New England. It was in this welcoming community that Michelle and Darian Plass celebrated the arrival of their daughter Amanda on December 11, 1990. From a young age, Amanda showed a profound curiosity about her surroundings. She often spent her time outside photographing a neighbor's dog or garden, or simply painting the scenery. You could frequently find her outdoors capturing the growing sunflowers on her canvas. Amanda was raised in a supportive home with her younger brother and an older sister. Though my little sister Amanda often felt like my guide, she had her life figured out long before I did. She always held me accountable and was the anchor for both of her siblings. One particular memory that stands out is from our childhood dressing alike and tossing stuffed animals at the ceiling fan. It was just innocent fun. As a waitress, she would save specific gummy bear colors for a child who frequented the restaurant. She was always doing small, thoughtful things like that. I truly hope people remember her for that incredible kindness. Amanda's gentle spirit and peaceful nature were an inspiration to everyone she knew. By 2011, Amanda was a self-reliant young woman devoted to her art writing and music. Her fierce independence led her to get her own place right after graduating high school. She settled on a quiet street located near the heart of Chicopee. All the while, she maintained a job at Friendly's, a restaurant whose name suited her personality perfectly. At the diner, Amanda worked diligently to ensure every guest felt welcome and enjoyed their visit. She also formed close bonds with her colleagues there, like fellow server Jesse Colum. Amanda and Jesse dated briefly, and though it ended, they remained amicable co-workers at the restaurant. Before long, Jesse was part of her past as Amanda met someone new, a man working in construction by the name of Seth Green. Their connection was immediate and intense, built on a shared love for the arts and an easy comfort with one another. They were a natural fit, and Amanda fell for him completely. Though they had only dated a week, Seth was a constant presence at her apartment and had practically moved in. On August 25, 2011, they spent another quiet evening in the home they were building. She painted while he worked on making jewelry, and they shared some marijuana. It was an ordinary evening, quite typical for any young couple. Seth's work became unexpectedly busy with his boss pushing him to complete a roofing project. His day was divided between being on site and running out for materials. The two usually texted constantly, but due to the pressure at his job, she heard from him infrequently. Seth did manage to call Amanda that afternoon, but the news was not good. He explained his boss was pressing to finish the job, so he couldn't drive her to her 5 p.m. shift. Amanda was let down by the news, but she understood his situation. She planned to meet Seth later, always being considerate. Amanda messaged Seth telling him not to worry since her ride was sorted. Lacking her usual transportation, Amanda contacted her friend Mercedes at 4:20 p.m. for a lift. Mercedes agreed to drive her to her shift that day. Just before 5 o'clock, Mercedes arrived and parked outside Amanda's apartment complex. Running a bit late, Mercedes texted from her car that she was waiting, but Amanda never replied. After 5 minutes without any word from her friend, she figured Amanda found another ride and drove off. Later, Seth's workday ended. Having not spoken to his girlfriend all day, he decided to visit her at Friendly's. When Seth asked for Amanda at the restaurant, the staff informed him she wasn't there. Seth just assumed she had finished her shift early and gone home. He stopped at his grandmother's to change clothes before heading to his girlfriend's apartment. Arriving at Amanda's place on School Street, Seth saw the porch window was smashed. He knew it wasn't broken that morning, and alarm bells started ringing. Inside, things from last night were still on the coffee table. He then entered the kitchen and saw red stains. He remembered Amanda using red paint for her artwork the previous evening. For a second, he thought she might have just spilled the paint jar by accident. But the red splattered on the counter cabinets and floor was not paint. It was blood. On the evening of August 26, 2011, Seth Green went to his girlfriend Amanda Plass's apartment. What he found there was a scene of pure horror. When police arrived, they found Seth Green on the porch, distraught and curled into a ball. Seth had discovered Amanda's body inside the kitchen of her suite. He had tried to perform CPR before calling 911, but she was already gone. Officers took him for questioning. Amanda had been subjected to a savage assault. Nothing could have saved her. The scene was horrific even for seasoned officers. Amanda was completely drenched in blood. She had suffered multiple stab wounds to her chest, neck, and abdomen. Her throat was cut. Blood was on the counter floor cupboards, baseboards, the stove, and even the door frames. Whatever transpired here represented a terribly violent end for this vibrant young woman. Local investigators immediately began the hunt for Amanda's killer. The lack of forced entry on the main door was the first detail that stood out, implying Amanda knew her attacker. The apartment building was older, meaning its doors and windows could sometimes be less secure. Police then located a shattered window on the porch of Amanda's third-floor residence. This appeared to be a plausible entry point for the attacker. Upon closer inspection, however, they saw the window was smashed from inside, suggesting it was used for exiting, not entering. Authorities also discovered blood and a dent on the refrigerator, indicating a struggle had taken place. Amanda had fought for her life. Significantly, within the vast amount of blood, investigators found a partial shoe print that was not the victim's. The victim herself was barefoot, so the print belonged to someone else. Though the case was new, police already had several important clues pointing to a suspect. The primary indicator was the ferocious and sustained nature of the attack on Amanda. Murders this vicious are often deeply personal. Authorities began to suspect a crime of passion. Their primary person of interest was Amanda's boyfriend, Seth Green. Their relationship was only a week old, but it had been an intense and rapid romance. The pair had been inseparable, essentially living together from the start. With such powerful emotions involved, it was plausible that things had escalated violently. When investigators brought Seth in for questioning, he was utterly distraught. While his profound grief was understandable at times, his reactions seemed almost theatrical. His weeping felt excessive, and he had discovered the body after a deeply personal assault. Investigators began to focus on the 24-year-old carpenter. Seth recounted his arduous workday, detailing his effort to complete an urgent roofing project. A detail from Seth's account of his day caught the investigators' attention. Seth Green mentioned that his work routes sometimes took him close to Amanda's home. He would occasionally visit, but claimed he had not on the 26th. Seth then confessed that before officers arrived, he had taken a marijuana pipe from the scene. He claimed he meant to retrieve marijuana from the prior evening, but it was gone. He further noted that his knife left on the coffee table had also disappeared. This mention of a knife was alarming, as the attacker had stabbed Amanda repeatedly. It was perplexing that Seth's first thought was to remove the pipe and search for drugs, given the horrific situation. The carpenter was becoming their primary suspect, yet he vehemently denied any involvement. The investigation had stalled. To discern the truth, officers proposed he volunteer for a polygraph examination. He consented. They hoped it would reveal whether the young man was a shattered partner or a calculated murderer. On August 26, 2011, mere hours after Amanda Plass's brutal murder, her new boyfriend, Seth Green, emerged as the central figure in the investigation. However, rigorous questioning by detectives yielded no significant breakthroughs. Eager for progress, police requested a polygraph, and Seth consented. They questioned Seth on his workday activities, focusing on 4:20 to 5 p.m. They inquired about his arrival at Amanda's home and his involvement in her death. The results indicated Seth was truthful about his timeline in finding her body. Investigators still harbored doubts about some of Seth's actions, but with the polygraph and a lack of evidence, they could not connect him to the crime. Seth was released, and he was no longer considered their main person of interest. The police focused on forensic evidence, processing DNA from multiple areas of the apartment. Crucially, they recovered DNA from beneath her fingernails, evidence of her final struggle. A palm print was lifted from the shattered window alongside a blood-stained footprint. This new evidence, combined with the crime's ferocity, suggested a personal motive, prompting police to investigate another man from Amanda Plass's life. Jesse Kuhn was a co-worker Amanda had dated just prior to meeting Seth Green. Their relationship was brief, but he had strong feelings and was hurt by the breakup. He warranted a closer look, so detectives questioned Jesse about his time with Amanda. He confirmed his affection for his co-worker and the pain he felt when it ended. A spurned ex-boyfriend fit the profile for such a brutal, passion-fueled assault. Investigators continued their line of questioning. They asked Jesse to provide a shoe for comparison with the bloody print from the scene. Jesse willingly complied, allowing them to make a detailed examination. The print was a men's 7.5. Jesse's foot was much too large. The motive fit. The physical evidence did not. The footprint was definitively not a match. To be certain, they also checked Jesse's handprint and collected a DNA sample. The results yielded nothing. Jesse Colum led the investigation nowhere. With both men cleared, any hope of solving the crime began to fade. The case of the young waitress and aspiring artist murdered in her own apartment had gone completely cold, yet her family refused to abandon their pursuit of justice. The family organized community events to keep awareness of the case alive. We gave a large donation to the Boys and Girls Club, which was very meaningful. My sister attended Head Start, so programs for low-income families helped us greatly, and we know our community needs them. So being able to contribute to the Boys and Girls Club in her honor is a significant accomplishment for us. I had hoped to create something like a music scholarship, but we just haven't been able to yet. Throughout the trial, the support we received from everyone was immense. It was truly overwhelming. Without the backing of our community, I'm not sure how we would have managed. For a 2-year span, Chicopee detectives would act on the rare tip, but the case largely remained stagnant. Then in 2013, the investigation suddenly reignited. The department got an anonymous 911 call from a man claiming he'd seen an email confessing to Amanda Plass' murder. The tipster mentioned the name Dennis. As police re-examined Jesse Colum's interview, a previously dismissed detail suddenly became critical. Amanda's ex-boyfriend had recounted a break-in at her apartment from earlier that summer. He remembered the intruder was someone whose name started with a D. Of course, Dennis began with a D. That name appeared once more as police went over the evidence again. It was on the dry erase board in the young woman's bedroom, alongside her personal affirmations and reminders. The handwriting suggested that someone else had written on the board. It was October 30th of 2013 when Trooper Ronnie Gibbons, who has become a very dear friend to us, called me to ask, "Do you have the dry erase board? Have you touched it?" I told him, "No, it's in my closet." That single tip had finally connected clues left dormant for 2 years. Police searched their internal database for any man in the area named Dennis. 2 individuals named Dennis were found residing near Amanda's apartment on School Street. One of these men, Dennis Rosa-Roman, also appeared in Amanda Plass' phone history. It was discovered he lived just 3.5 blocks from Amanda's apartment when she was killed. Amanda had spoken to a Dennis, and a caller now claimed a Dennis confessed to the murder of the 20-year-old woman. Investigators had to locate Dennis Rosa-Roman immediately. After a 2-year search for Amanda's killer, was it possible the suspect had been hiding in plain sight? Dennis Rosa-Roman became a person of extreme interest to police after the anonymous tip about a confession. Authorities went to Dennis's home, which was just 3 blocks from Amanda's building, and encountered him in his yard. Dennis was cooperative, so they began with simple questions like if he knew Amanda. He confirmed that he did. Dennis admitted to officers he had previously sold marijuana to Amanda. He seemed forthcoming, but also slightly guarded. Investigators noted that Rosa-Roman seemed anxious, though his nerves were understandable. 2 officers had just approached him unexpectedly, prompting him to admit he was a drug dealer. They let Dennis leave, but gave him a contact number in case he remembered any other details he wanted to share. Only a few days after that initial meeting, Dennis decided to contact them. He took them up on their offer and called. He was frantic on the phone, insisting he had vital information. They invited him to the station to talk. On November 5, 2013, over 2 years after Amanda Plass was killed in her home, Dennis Rosa-Roman walked into the station with his own account of events. Dennis asserted that on the afternoon of August 26th, he visited Amanda's apartment to sell her marijuana. As he approached her residence, he heard a man's raised voice inside, prompting him to leave the area. Dennis portrayed himself to law enforcement as a generous acquaintance who gave Amanda marijuana. Yet he claims on that particular day, he heard an unfamiliar man inside a dealer supposedly pursuing Dennis over a debt. The problem was, Dennis's account became tangled and altered significantly during his interrogation. At one point, he denied ever entering Amanda's apartment, only to later say that he had. First, he claimed he'd known her only a week, then he conceded their acquaintance was longer. Authorities were unsure what was true, but they were certain that Dennis was being deceptive. Consequently, they continued to apply pressure. During the questioning, Dennis Rosa-Roman alleged that days prior to the killing, Amanda mentioned several break-ins at her apartment, making police suspect he was gauging what they knew. At this juncture in the interview, the investigators felt it was the right moment to present Dennis with the critical item of evidence. He confessed to writing the message which undeniably put him inside her residence. Confronted with the evidence from the dry erase board, Dennis recalled almost casually that he was there but didn't want to be perceived as a killer. Investigators continued pressing Dennis, showing him the bloody footprint before requesting his shoe for comparison. With every piece of evidence from the scene, the police intensified their focus on him. Dennis unexpectedly consented to letting them verify his shoe size. An identical shoe size was hardly enough to convict, but after 2 years it was a solid starting point, and the police used it to build their case, causing trouble to mount for the small-time dealer. Officials tested Dennis's DNA and palm print against samples recovered from Amanda's apartment. The DNA results were a positive match, but true to form, Dennis quickly devised another story. This time he claimed he entered the apartment and confronted the supposed drug dealer. Dennis asserted that he attempted to protect Amanda from the attacker, but he failed and then fled, claiming he was afraid for his own safety. Dennis was now desperate. He was prepared to invent any story to protect himself. The issue was that his tale, however improbable, did account for his DNA being at the murder scene. It also shifted the blame to an unidentified assailant. Had the police investigation merely brought them back to their starting point? By November 2013, Dennis Rosa-Roman was the prime suspect in the 2011 murder of the 20-year-old waitress. Although his narrative kept shifting, Dennis had entangled himself in a web of his own making. Dennis had confirmed being present during the murder, which explained the discovery of his DNA. The detective exited the room, leaving Dennis by himself with his thoughts. Dennis appeared profoundly agitated, pacing the room and trembling uncontrollably. He examined the evidence repeatedly. Something was wrong, and his fabricated story was clearly beginning to collapse. When the detective re-entered, he acknowledged Dennis's story might create reasonable doubt. However, the investigators could see the falsehoods in his account. The footprint, the palm print from the window, and his DNA were all a match. Confident in their case, police arrested Dennis Rosa-Roman, charging him with Amanda's murder. Finally, an arrest was made, sparking widespread confusion among the community. The question on everyone's mind was about the identity of this unknown man. It marked the end of a long 2-year ordeal for Amanda's family, who had endured immense suffering. Countless individuals were looked into, and numerous DNA samples were collected even from my former husband. For 2 years, there were so many questions and absolutely no answers for anyone. I underwent therapy for a full year without any success, a process I'll need to restart as it's simply a necessity. It's something you must face. For many years, I had to be a pillar of strength for my mother. On July 7, 2016, a full 5 years after Amanda's tragic death, the trial finally commenced. Dennis entered a plea of not guilty, maintaining his account of being present at the apartment when Amanda died. He insisted, however, on his innocence in her murder. Dennis conveyed his story with passion and believability. The police were unprepared for the profound doubt this account would sow. On the trial's opening day, lead prosecutor Karen J. Ball outlined a straightforward case for the jury. She began her argument with a powerful unifying theme: a single killer. A single defendant, one set of bloody footprints, and one key male DNA profile under her fingernails. One killer, one defendant. Through evidence and statements, she meticulously detailed the case, connecting Dennis Rosa-Roman exclusively to the crime. Over the 8-day trial, the jury reviewed around 160 pieces of evidence gathered from the scene. A DA Ball painted the poignant picture of a vibrant young life that was tragically and senselessly extinguished. A future was stolen, leaving her loved ones completely heartbroken. Her broken family was forced to endure the courtroom hearing agonizing details presented day after day. My entire world was permanently altered. The pain won't disappear, but now the healing can finally begin. No sentence will bring Amanda back, and I face endless years of wondering about the woman she would have become. 3 pieces of evidence were central to the prosecution's case. These included a palm print on the broken window, a bloody shoe print, and the DNA discovered under the victim's fingernails. Every one of these items was linked directly to Dennis Rosa-Roman. Despite this compelling evidence, the defense aimed to convince the jury that an alternate series of events occurred and the killer was still free. Defense attorney Donald Frank conceded that Dennis was at the scene and witnessed an altercation that day. He argued, however, that an unknown drug dealer was the person who actually killed Amanda, insisting Dennis knew who did it. The prosecution pointed to Dennis's contradictory statements to police regarding his involvement. Two particular elements, however, became pivotal in the arguments. They were brought up in early interviews and again in trial testimonies. The court heard testimony that Amanda had confided in her ex-boyfriend Jesse Cullum about break-ins at her apartment. Furthermore, the jury was shown the distinct message left on her dry erase board. While anyone could have broken in, the message on the board prompted the jury to draw a clear connection. A major flaw in the defense's theory was Dennis's refusal to name the alleged drug dealer, citing his family's safety. He consistently refused to name the other man supposedly involved. He repeatedly stated his own fear for his safety, a point worth stressing. He claimed to fear for his family. Based on the evidence, the prosecution presented a clear narrative of the murder. Amanda Plass and Dennis Rosa-Roman were acquainted. He sold her marijuana, and one could even consider them friends. A week before the murder, he wrote his name on her bedroom's dry erase board. On August 26, 2011, Dennis might have broken into Amanda's apartment. It's possible he wasn't expecting her to be home at the time. With no forced entry, a more plausible scenario is that Amanda opened the door to her friend and her killer that day. One theory suggests Dennis had become obsessed with Amanda, and her rejection of his feelings caused him to lose control. This would explain the brutal nature of the attack that day. The prosecution argued Dennis arrived and Amanda let him in. She likely told him it wasn't a good time, a response he was unwilling to accept. He refused to take no for an answer. A struggle began, and Amanda fought for her life. Dennis then took a knife and stabbed her 6 times. Ms. Platt suffered a stab wound to her throat, 2 on her right side and 2 more on her left side. She had lacerations on her face, and her throat was also slashed. Additionally, she had bruises on her face, head, shoulders, and legs. Model. After he's gone, her boyfriend Seth Green makes the devastating discovery. The prosecution has presented its case, and now everything rests with the jury as they begin to deliberate his fate. For Amanda's family, the agonizing wait for a decision begins. 2 years have passed since the artist Amanda Plass was killed in her Massachusetts kitchen. It is November 2013. Dennis Rosa-Roman, a minor drug dealer who knew Amanda, is on trial for her murder. He's attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative, claiming another man was the real killer and he was just a helpless witness. But his testimony fails to account for one crucial piece of evidence: his DNA under her nails. Following 8 days of testimony, the jury needs only 5 hours to decide. Dennis Rosa-Roman is convicted of first-degree murder for killing Amanda Plass and receives a life sentence. On the charge of murder in the first degree committed with extreme atrocity and deliberate premeditation, this court imposes its sentence. The court sentences you to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction for the remainder of your natural life without any possibility of parole. You have 10 days to appeal this sentence in writing. The defendant is remanded into custody. This has been an incredibly long and difficult journey for all involved. After the verdict, District Attorney Anthony Galini holds a press conference to thank his prosecution team. He also commends the Massachusetts State Police and the Chicopee Police for their unwavering dedication. However, this harrowing ordeal has taken its greatest toll on Amanda's family. Led by her mother, Michelle Pina, they have fought for 5 years to see justice served. But while the conviction provides some closure, another controversy looms. The family's loss in 2011 was already an unbearable tragedy. Compounding their pain, the family had to confront a disturbing incident from the very start of the investigation. After the murder, Chicopee police officers were assigned to secure the apartment. It turned out the integrity of the scene itself was compromised. Officers guarding the scene took unauthorized photographs of Amanda's body and shared them among themselves. When the news broke, our attorney called and asked me, "So what do you want to do now?" I told her, "We are suing. I've had enough. We're filing a lawsuit." So we did. This unethical act only compounded the family's unimaginable grief and their suffering. My mom was the one who started the fight, and I joined in to help carry it across the finish line. She put in so much effort at the start, finding the right lawyer and getting things moving. She was instrumental in drafting the complaint, which required meticulous revision. Legal language has to be incredibly precise. To think about how brutal that scene was, it just begs the question, who would even conceive of taking a picture of something so awful? What kind of disturbed person does that, and then decides to share it? To not just share it, but to actually save it on your phone. The incident exposed a glaring loophole in the law concerning the sharing of crime scene photos. The officers involved faced only minor repercussions, but Amanda's mother's advocacy spurred new legislation. We filed our lawsuit on June 10, 2013, and that was the same day we began the campaign for what would become Amanda's Law. State Representative Joe Wagner first introduced the bill to outlaw this practice in 2013. I urged everyone I could to contact their state officials, the governor, their senators. I told them to send emails simply stating, "I support this bill. Please stand with us." And the community response was just overwhelming. The support we received was incredible. After a long campaign, Governor Charles Baker signed Amanda's Law on August 4, 2022, 11 years after her death. With Amanda's Law finally enacted, my mother half-jokingly asked, "Should we pursue this at a national level, considering it's not a federal statute and few states have similar policies?" Taking that fight to the federal stage could very well be the next chapter. This effort is fundamentally about honoring victims' dignity through a law that shields a mourning family's privacy, like Amanda's was. While this legislation offers a degree of justice and finality, it also stands as a tribute to the vibrant young artist lost so prematurely. The tragic story of Amanda Plass is more than a cold case file. It is a profound reminder that a person's dignity must be guarded even and especially after their final breath. Amanda was a vibrant artist, a sister, and a daughter whose future was stolen in a senseless act of violence. Yet the betrayal she faced didn't end with her killer. It continued when those sworn to protect her failed to respect her remains. This story teaches us a vital lesson. Justice is not just about a conviction. It is about humanity. The relentless fight by Amanda's family to pass Amanda's Law proves that out of the deepest darkness we can forge a shield for others. It serves as a powerful call to action for integrity within our institutions and a reminder that privacy is a fundamental human right. We learn that while we cannot change the past, we have the sacred duty to protect the stories and the sanctity of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Let us carry Amanda's memory not as a tragedy, but as a beacon for respect, ethical courage, and the unbreakable bond of a family's love.